Welcome to the Brokers Open Podcast.
This week on Brokers Open Podcast, Justin and Matt talk about breaking into a new market, especially the luxury market, turning showings into sellings, leads versus transactions, everything from life lessons in your MBA to traveling to Norway and much more. Upcoming events of how to participate with Brokers Open Podcast, all in this episode.
Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by our friends at Palm Media. Palm Media is a boutique digital marketing company built for realtors by realtors. They help agents and teams dominate a target market with specific, tailored strategies. Everything from video, chatbots, landing pages, Facebook ads, database management, and coaching. And oh my gosh, it is way more affordable and simple than you could ever imagine. Call now for 100% free strategy session, whether you have a budget or not. Dr. Ben, my good friend, will make sure that you are heading in the right direction, building your presence online, or flat out crushing your competition. Before you spend a dime on marketing, door knocking, or sending out postcards, call Palm Media, 813-765-7706, 813-765-7706, or click the link in the description below. Manifest your paradise.
So, it's Friday, right?
I'm excited, man. I really am. I got a terrible night's sleep last night, but I woke up this morning going, we got the podcast in the morning. I just love being able to do this on Friday morning.
It is. It's something to look forward to all week.
Yeah.
And you know, the whole week, you know, you're thinking about things that are leading up to this, and you're like, oh, I can talk about that on Friday. Oh, no, I can talk about it on Friday. We could make the podcast like 19 hours on Friday with all the stuff that happens during the week, because now you're just alert to what you want to share with people to help them with their business. Yeah. And every little thing, you're like, ooh, that would help. Ooh, that would help. Ooh, that would help.
Yeah, Matt and I will frequent calls and text messages during the week and, you know, mention, we got to mention that on Friday. Or,
we just met this person. Oh, my God, they'd be fantastic. Let's get them on there.
Yeah.
We've got some great guests lining up. Just like usual, just like the last time that you and I kind of sat here and talked. You know, we said we had some great guests coming up. We had some awesome people come in off to that. We got a great podcast dropping. Probably later today, maybe first thing tomorrow. That's with JD. That's gonna be fantastic.
Yeah, so he's such a good interview. I mean, he was so dynamic and everything. I mean, every now and again, Matt and I like to, you know, maybe give the guest thing a little bit of a break and kind of, you know, every now and again let you guys into who we are a little bit more as people, and you know, kind of talk a little bit more relaxed on those types of subjects, because sometimes those interviews can get very detail oriented and very serious. So it's kind of nice every now and again just to go off the cuff. Yeah, like we normally do. It's like a phone conversation with us.
That's exactly right.
With a camera, and I need my coffee this morning, like I said,
and a microphone.
I slept for.
So why'd you sleep so bad? Is it too early to break out the story on why you slept so bad? Can we talk about that?
Well, it's because I opened that email that I showed you, and I'm laying in bed at 9:45 at night, which is already late for me. You know that. Yeah. If that's
like midnight for everyone else out there. By the way.
If I see 9:45, it's just like panic sets in. But I got a really good email last night, and I'm looking at it with my wife. I'm like, can you believe this?
Yeah.
And
well, I can.
So I got all excited about it, and then I'm sitting there laying in bed going, okay, what am I going to talk about? Right. You know, what am I going to wear?
Right.
You know, those are the things that go through my head.
So he's got a speaking engagement that's coming up. We've actually got a few that are coming up that you know, Brokers Open are going to be out there doing and everything. So you guys be on the lookout for that. But he's got one that he's doing with luxury stuff. So you guys know he's a boss at all the luxury end of things.
Well,
and so he's going to be you know, we probably can't get a whole lot into it. We got to make sure it's a little bit more official. But he's going to be able to do some luxury speaking. And so folks that especially I think this is probably important to say, and hopefully you won't take offense to this. Younger people that are trying to break into that market. It's important for them to have a path and somebody that's done that already. And so, you know, you jumped into the luxury end of the market early on.
Right.
And it's important for people that want to do that, because, you know, we've touched on this before. You know, if somebody wants to up their commission dollar, they either get a higher commission split.
Right.
They up their average sales price. Right. Or they get their retained commission dollar. They up that. You know, how much of you know, can they get 3%? Or are they only good enough to get 1% or 2% or whatever the deal is? So it's one of the three of those, and you have done a very good job on all three of those. But also in the one of upping the average price means breaking into that luxury market. Right. So you've done a great job of that. I can't wait to hear you talking about that and helping some folks out, especially some of the younger folks.
It'll be fun. I mean, that's something that I really enjoy, and it's actually something I spoke about on my Instagram this morning.
Nice.
And because those are questions that you and I get as a market presidents almost on a daily basis. If not, I'll guarantee you I get them weekly. How do I double my sales volume, or how do I even up my sales volume? How do I break into the luxury market? All of those questions get asked, and there's a lot of complicated things that surround those questions, and they're very vague questions. But I always go back to the idea of you're only as good as your network. Right. So your sphere of influence, however big or small it is,
completely agree. Yep.
You got to look inside of it, and you got to be able to pick it apart like it's a box of chocolates and understand what you actually have in front of you, and be able to understand how you can work that network.
Completely agree.
Right?
Completely agree. And a lot of people, what they think is I want to get into the luxury market, so I really need to focus all my business on doing luxury business. And that's not the case. You break into the luxury market by getting that one chocolate that happens that you've got a great relationship with, going back to that example, and you help them with it. So if you've got, just the quick math on it, you do 10 houses, one of them is 2.2 million, and the rest of them are 200,000. That ups your whole average game, plus you got more exposure on that $2 million property as you move forward with your business. It's not like you're going to throw away all those other 200,000.
Right.
And so people being able to break into it have to understand that some of it is just a process.
Yeah.
It's not an event.
And it's a longer process, too. A lot of people want to get into the luxury market when you're dealing with houses from, let's say, 100 to 300,000. You're probably looking at an average days on market as of right now, less than a month. Right? Your inventory count.
Yep.
Once you hop into that million-plus range, you're probably looking closer to 8 to 12 months.
Absolutely. Buyer pool is smaller.
Right. And people always think that this thing is all glamorous, and showing these million-plus dollar homes is what they make it out to be on TV. It ain't. Yep. It ain't. Yeah, is it beautiful to go and look at the water and do whatever you got to do when you're showing a house that's that magnitude? Yeah, but at the same time, when you have that listing, you're spending so much money on marketing.
Oh, yeah.
And, the pressure is on you tenfold, because the owners of that home are expecting tip-top service and, presentation from you. So I think that, yes, you're doing the same quote-unquote work for a 300,000 as a million, but I disagree with that on a lot of levels.
Absolutely.
The process on the back end is the same.
Right. The transaction itself.
Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, well, you can make
similar.
I could make $5,000 on this deal, or I can make 30 grand on that deal. It's a no-brainer to go over here. Yes, but completely no.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're using the same forms, and you're going to go through the process the same. Right, you have inspection periods and all that.
That's right.
But the game couldn't be more different. It would be like somebody being in residential real estate their whole life and then going, you know what? I'm going to be really good at commercial.
Yeah, I can sell that apartment building.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
There's a lot to do before you get to the table. A lot to do. So one of my agents just sold a 2.5, and this was, so we had an event. The listing actually expired. And so she stayed connected with a bunch of people that had been to the event, and it was a 12-month, not a 6-month listing agreement.
Right. Everyone should do the 12-month agreement if you're going to do luxury.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's great. Anytime along this, you're more experienced in this. Anytime we're talking about this, just cut me off and jump in and do that.
Yeah.
So we had a 12-month listing agreement, spent a ton of money, but she did a great job of staying in touch with potential buyers that she met, as well as the agents that had potential buyers. 2 months after, one of the buyers comes back from another Berkshire Hathaway, which was fantastic. Buyer comes back. The last contingency, last night at 11:30, she texts me and says, "Hey, we just got 2 hours ago, we got the response back from the appraiser.
Good for her.
Second appraisal just went through because they wanted 2 appraisals. There was earnest money going hard, all that kind of stuff." And she goes, "We just got it back. Everything's in great shape. We're moving forward." I'm like, "That's fantastic." So we had to figure out, because there's some protections in the listing agreement, right? But we had to make sure we got to the bottom of all of that. The seller expected a certain level of service, and she was able to provide on it, and that's why they were willing to work with her. After that expired, and she brought that buyer back to the table. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that people don't, that they don't want to. I hate to say put in the work, but they don't want to put in the work to make sure that they know how to deal with 2 appraisals that are being required by everybody. They don't want to put in the work to make sure that the inspections are lined up at the right time after the appraisals.
Yeah.
Because now they're going to go through the inspections. Both of the appraisal contingency was on there that both people were going to have an appraisal. They didn't want to do the inspections first.
Right.
There's no need.
Right.
If it doesn't appraise on both of them, forget about it.
Yeah. Game's over.
That's right. And so, I stayed as close to her as I need to. She's an experienced agent. I didn't have to do a whole lot with that, but we talked through a couple of things early on with that and everything. I can't wait for people to see and hear you talking folks through that.
Yeah.
Because I'm positive some of the stuff that you helped put together with the luxury division with us help her make that opportunity happen. And I'm excited for some other people to hear you speak on that.
I'd like to think so. I mean, I think I have a pretty similar story when it comes to tapping into that market. So everyone's like, well, how do you tap into the luxury market? And that could be something that you and I talk about for hours, days, whatever it might be. And that question is going to be answered differently by a lot of different people, and that's what works for you. But I remember up to a point in my career where I'd actually moved back to Largo from starting working in Bonita Springs, and I had just moved back, and my wife and I, we had just bought our first house, and there was a guy, and we were on the cheap row of streets. We bought our house, and it was in the low 200,000s or whatever. But then right down the street is, Millionaire's Row.
Right.
And so, the cheapest property on that street would be the land, and that would be $1.5 million just for the land, and then it'd go all the way up to 10-something million.
Right.
And then there was this guy that I would see all the time, because I was always outdoors. I was either riding my bike or running or, whatever. And so he, kind of took to me, and we started talking and created that relationship first that we always talk about. And this particular guy had been through 3 or 4 realtors, I can't remember, and they were all year-long listing agreements. And for a while there, he was kind of venting to me. And at this point in my career, all I wanted to be was a sounding board for him. I didn't want to go up there and go, hey, I'm the best real estate guy you got. Because really, I mean, like up to that point, the highest sales price that I had was $550,000, and this guy's listing was 2.6. And so long story short, he's like, hey, I'm going to put my house for sale by owner, and I know that you're not going to like that. And I was like, yeah, I get it, but that I totally disagree with what you're doing, and I could have gone down that rabbit hole with him. But he said, what I'd like to do instead of doing the for sale by owner number on the sign is I would like to put your cell phone number on it so you can field all the calls, and if you bring a buyer, I'm going to pay you 3%.
Right.
And I go, okay, great.
Love to.
Right? I mean, what a perfect scenario.
I was going to say that's almost best case scenario.
Yeah, I'm not out of pocket for anything. I'm just taking $1 million+ buyers lead calls.
Absolutely. Putting those in the database, tucking those away for now or later,
which is hilarious. So he was like, realtors out there, suggest that to people who are really, really stuck on for sale by owner. So don't always push against the grain, because these people who want to do for sale by owner have already got it thought out in here.
Right.
And sometimes you're not going to break down that barrier, at least not right away. And this is what I did. But let them sit, let them go, hey, listen, you have a lot to do during the day, right? You got your own job, your career path, whatever it might be. Let me field the calls. And that worked for me. And so what I did was I fielded the calls for about 3 months, and as you would suspect, a majority of the calls were other realtors trying to get the listing.
Oh, yeah.
So they, I would answer the phone, and they're like,
what?
This is not what I called.
And then moonwalk out of it.
But I handled myself accordingly, and I would give this guy weekly updates. Hey, here's what we got, and I really, really positioned myself to be kind of the power behind all that leverage there. And long story short, he ends up saying, Justin, I really want you to list the house. Again, I was at this point either the 4th or the 5th realtor, and about 6 months into my listing agreement, we got a contract on it, closed it, and that was $2.4 million. And I mean, keep in mind, my previous sale that was $550,000, so I'm absolutely shitting a brick.
Right.
And
just making sure everything goes smooth. Yep.
I remember negotiating and doing that. I think I was probably 23 or 24 years old.
Yeah.
Just shitting a brick, telling this guy I got to negotiate with him. And this guy is a high-end finance guy from California.
Right.
So he knows his stuff, and I just remember just being shaking in my boots. But long story short
You
is,
did it, man.
just because you haven't done it before doesn't mean that perception is reality. So go and work hard for that business. That listing took me probably 6 months prior to getting that for sale by owner, right? And then 3 months of fielding the calls for the for sale
Right.
by owner. So we're already at probably 9 months, right?
Right.
And then it took me over 6 months once I got the listing. So we're talking about
Absolutely.
over a year and a half of actual work
Absolutely.
to get this done. And that's the type of work that you got to put in on the luxury side that people don't realize.
That's exactly right. That's what I was going to say is they don't. There's so many times when people are trying to break into a market, they don't realize that breaking into the market isn't opening a door into the market.
Yeah.
It is breaking down the walls. It is
Yep.
meeting people. It's learning about it.
Yep.
You can't just go into a neighborhood and say, "Hey, I'm the neighborhood expert because I live here."
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of things that you have to do in order to get to that point, and that's what you did with him. The other important thing here is the market probably adjusted at that point to absorb his property. It wasn't ready to absorb his property.
You're
Whether
right.
whether it was price or whether it was there was just not as many buyers and all that. There was a lot of factors that helped out with that. So there's not an urgency to get that done. And so a lot of people watching might say, well, you know what? You could have gotten a phone call and then that person didn't work with you. And then the next thing you know, they're buying the house and all that kind of stuff. The experience that you got, the understanding of dealing with that,
Yeah.
the bringing it up to speed on the market, all of that really has a value to it. Now,
Yeah.
you can't pay your phone bill with that value.
Right.
But it has a value allowing you to work into that market. And if you're paying it forward with him, he's going to tell other people about you.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if that wouldn't have worked out, he'd have said, this guy Justin was really great about this. Or, hey, Justin, can you write the contract? I'm busy. Or, hey, Justin, I met some guys playing golf. Can you help this guy out because he's trying to buy a house? Because they knew that you sincerely were doing what you needed to do.
Yeah.
That's how you break into something.
Yeah, totally.
And whether it's luxury,
Doesn't-
or
yeah,
whether
doesn't-
it's a neighborhood,
Yeah.
or whether it's a condo complex you want to sell on that's in the beach or whatever it is, you got to kind of pay that forward.
Yeah, and that's what people got to keep in mind too.
Patiently.
Is everyone thinks, okay, I got to make a paycheck tomorrow. What's going to be my quickest route? As opposed to, I got to be in this for the long haul. What can I do that is a value add situation to this customer right now? Because
Great
if you
point.
provide the value today, tomorrow, and the next day, you're going to have more referrals than you could ever dream of,
Yep.
as opposed to if you're chasing that dollar and chasing that buck.
Yeah, so that's a great point. So I just talked to somebody about this. Where it was an agent coming on board with us, an experienced agent, and they were talking about their business cycle, and their business cycle was down a little bit, and so we talked about why it might be down, and the conversation was, there's now and future business. Every day you have to work on both. You can't just work on the now business. And some coaches that you hear, they're out there and they're really, if somebody's not writing a contract in 7 days, throw them away.
Yeah.
Move on to the next person. And that's a great idea if all you want to focus on is now business.
Yeah.
Breaking into the luxury market is not a now business.
Right.
Breaking into a subdivision that you want to sell in, that somebody else knocking somebody else out of the saddle to be the leader in that subdivision, that neighborhood expert, that's not now business.
Right.
That's all future stuff. So people have to be working on both of those simultaneously.
Yeah.
When you come in the morning, it's not just about, hey, I want to be a luxury agent, so I'm going to work on it now. Oh my gosh, I got to pay my bills. 2 weeks later, you forget about the luxury stuff that you started. Right. So you've got to have both of those running
You're so
at
right.
the same time.
Yeah.
And people forget about that. And so when they're looking at their buckets and their sourcing of their business and all that kind of stuff, I believe that you should have 5 buckets. If you need to make money now, then 3 of those buckets need to be now buckets,
Right.
and 2 of them need to be future.
Right.
If you're set in a position that you want to break into a market and you don't really need that, then maybe 3 of those are future business and 2 of those are now.
Yeah.
Or 4 of those are future and 1 of those is a now bucket. And so that's the kind of stuff that we talk about, whenever, people are trying
With
to
your
get into a different
coaching.
market.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good way to put it, and Matt's buckets represent time and resources, and that's really where you got to put your efforts. And I have been guilty of just that, of just focusing on the now.
Yep.
In my career when
Me too.
I was doing the boutique thing. Scott and I, got fat and happy one year, and we absolutely crushed it one year. And it was because the year before we had planned accordingly and done all the right things.
Yep.
And then that year that we sold to the moon, we were so focused on handling everything that we possibly could and not drop a ball that was in the air that we forgot
Oh, yeah.
to prospect and do this stuff in the future. And quite literally, our volume dropped in half the next year.
I believe it.
Half.
Yeah, I believe it.
Half.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to get comfortable. And, it's like I was reading a book, and I'm reading the book now. And people always say that,
What's the name of the book?
It's so cheesy. My mom bought it for me. I don't watch this show. It's the $1 Million Listing Show.
Yeah, right.
It's a phenomenal book. This guy, Ryan Serhant.
Oh, yeah.
It's called Sell Like Serhant.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to say his last name. I'll preface this with this book has been sitting in my center console of my truck for 6 months now.
Right.
My mom gave it to me, and I'm like, I'm not reading this $1 Million Listing bullshit.
I just listened to him with Gary Vee, the podcast or whatever it was.
Was it good?
I listened to about half of it. Yeah, it was good. It was.
He's good. I mean, he's dynamic. What they do on that show and what they fabricate is a different thing.
Right.
But I think genuinely, I mean,
I agree.
obviously, to sell $300 million a year, you got to know what the hell you're doing.
Right.
But the book, I mean, I was sitting in my office yesterday eating lunch, and I read 60 pages.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah, that's
that doesn't
into it.
happen. So
Right.
I was really, really excited about it. But, people get focused on the now and the current situation as opposed to what he was saying is putting as many balls in the air as possible as opposed to just having the one ball.
Yep.
And, people are like, I'm only as good as my last sale. But realistically, you need to be forecasting for the future.
Absolutely.
And
there's not one guest that we had that said you can't think forward about what you're wanting to accomplish on and off the camera.
Yeah.
That's a great point. I mean, how many times do we have to hear that before we absorb it, right?
Yeah.
So
he had a really cool. So this is neat, and this is going to be applicable to a lot of people in this book. And I honestly, real estate people, you heard it from me. I would recommend reading this book. I mean, I think it is that good. I do. Yeah. I don't think it's cheesy. I don't think it's to sell stuff. Whatever. I really, because I've gotten some valuable tidbits just in 60 pages, and I'm going to read a lot more this weekend.
Right.
But he hadn't yet broken into the sales market in New York City, so he was doing a lot of leases and just trying to get by and pay his rent. Right. So he would go and show $3,500 a month apartments, make that check, and hope to live on it.
Right.
He hadn't yet sold anything.
Right.
And he got this suspicious buyer's lead online and ended up following up with it and following up with it and following up with it. When a lot of people would have probably gotten rid of it or said, screw this, I don't have time for this.
Let's talk about leads next.
Exactly. We should.
Yeah.
So remind us.
That's right.
But so the long story short is the guy on the other end of this was a billionaire, and it didn't feel like it because there were so many padded walls to it, and there were a lot of gates that he had to get by to understand what this guy was looking for. Ryan hadn't met this guy, didn't know him from Adam, but he knew that the lead source was real, and he was willing to take a leap of faith. He bought a plane flight to Paris, where this guy lived, went directly to his office, and brought him a contract for the property that he was interested in and said, let's write this thing up. They hop on the guy's jet, come back. Long story short, he got the deal.
Wow.
And his first deal was $8.6 million.
Wow.
But
good for him.
No, I'm not telling you to get on the plane with some psychopath lead.
Right. That's right.
But
he did a lot of work.
There are a lot of success stories there. There's a guy I know, Rogers Healy, out of Texas. The guy is a genius with what he's doing, and he's a younger guy. I think he's probably 37, 38 now. But what he did was he made his career on the NFL and the NBA.
Right.
So when people would get transferred and stuff, what he would do is he would make relationships with these sports agents.
Right.
And he would fly all over the country just to get leases for these sports agents. So he'd fly into Atlanta, make sure that so-and-so got a house.
Wow.
And
good for him.
But his first break into that was, I'm serious, I'm real. And he kept telling these sports agents, I'm really real about this. So he flew from Dallas, Texas, where he lives, to Boston, I believe the city was, to go to this sports agent, show up to his office and say, what did I tell you?
Yeah,
I'm
the real
here.
Deal.
I'm ready to do this, and I'm gonna fly each place to find your client something. Even though, after you buy the plane flight and hotel stay and stuff like that, it's probably a net.
Right.
Maybe losing money.
Right.
he has built an empire
Oh,
on this.
he's the guy that spoke at the event, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was fantastic.
He is a stud.
Yeah.
Total stud. I mean, he's
100% committed to his plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
He
He just
rolled-
believed in it.
Right.
He just said, "Yeah, I'm going to do
Right.
this."
Nobody else is doing this. I'm going to do it. I know
Right.
it'll work.
Right.
Here we go.
Yeah. So I find that admirable, and like I said,
huge.
we're not endorsing you to go fly somewhere, but sometimes real estate agents, we're very accustomed to the way things should go or the way that I want them to go, as opposed to, okay, the deal is dead or this client is not real, and we just have a way of shoving it out, right? Instead of going that little extra mile that could really mean the difference.
So let's step out on that. Let's step out on that cliff a little bit. And here's what I run into whenever that happens. Or here's what I think the agent runs into whenever that happens, and then I hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
So many times they're not sure what to do. Because it is outside the box, they're not sure what to do and how to handle it, so they shut down.
Right.
Instead of trying to figure it out, instead of trying to work through it, instead of trying to whatever. All right, so I'm going to tell you a quick story about stupid stuff that people do.
Yeah.
Long story, a lot more to it, but here's the basics of it. 87-year-old guy rolls into the town that I live in. I show him some properties. We talked a couple of times on the phone. There was no internet. This has been a while. Okay. So he rolls into town. He's getting ready to leave the office. We looked at a couple of things. Getting ready to leave the office, and he starts crying.
Oh my God.
I'm like, man, what's going on? He's like, I forgot my suitcase back in Shreveport, Louisiana. So I said, let's go to Walmart. We'll get you some clothes. We go to Walmart. He buys the clothes. I call my wife and said, hey, this is what I'm doing, all that kind of stuff and everything. She says, well, bring him home for dinner. He probably doesn't have it because it's 8:30, 9 o'clock now. So he's got a reservation for a hotel. He comes home, has dinner with us, goes to the hotel. Next day, gets up. I show him a couple more houses. He's needs to drive back to get his wife. Mm-hmm. He drives back within a week, gets his wife, and brings her back. They're making a decision on the house, and he has to drive back, and the guy is absolutely exhausted. Mm-hmm. So what did I do? I drove him and his wife back to Shreveport, Louisiana, to meet with the movers, to get everything loaded up. Absolutely, I'm not telling anybody to do that.
How long is that drive?
13 hours.
Holy shit.
One way.
Oh my God.
One way.
Hey,
So-
I admire that so much.
So he does not buy a house in the town that I'm in. I end up getting a referral fee on that to an agent in a town about an hour south of that. Mm-hmm. And there were things that went absolutely incredible in that transaction, and there were things that did not go incredible in that transaction. I didn't do all of that for him. I did all of that because it was the right thing to do, mm-hmm. and I knew that that's the type of agent that I wanted to be.
Right.
And that happening set with me. Not that everybody needs to drive around and go doing 13 hours, but that was ridiculous. But it set with me how I wanted to look at what the customer actually deserved.
Right.
He needed that to happen, and I needed to be able to be there to do that. He had a hot water heater blow up 3 weeks after they moved into the house. Who did he call? He didn't call the agent he bought the house from. He didn't call the home warranty company, any of that kind of stuff.
What do I do, Matt?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he said. So you gotta be all in with it. You can't be part of the way. You can't be some of the way. You gotta be 100% all in with it. So let's talk about leads.
Well, hold on. I love this subject line because it speaks to me on so many different levels, and it speaks to the guests that we have on this show. And I don't care what you do professionally. If it's real estate and you're a realtor out there and you're thinking about real estate, whatever. If you have a pay it forward mentality throughout all aspects of your life, you're going to be a happier person. You're going to have positive people around you that make an impact. And as a result of the person that you decide to be on a daily basis directly affects your family, your friends, and your income and your life path.
100% agree.
The more that you give, the happier person that you are, the more positive energy that you breed, mm-hmm. the rest of your life just falls in line.
Absolutely.
So
to to round all that up, right? So, and I didn't do that for this reason.
Yeah.
Not 6 months ago. I did that. That was late 90s. Okay. Not 6 months ago, the agent that I referred him to called and said, "Hey, Matt, I trust you.
Right.
I'm getting ready to make a decision on something I want to do with my career, from commercial to residential and all that kind of stuff. I know that you know, can you talk me through this? I'm wanting to make." So that person called, and I can't tell you how many people she referred to my office to work with me.
Sure.
And she, because she moved, and
Yeah.
people knew her, and they're like, "Hey, I was thinking about doing it." And she said, "Absolutely, you should go talk to Matt before." So there was a lot of benefit that I got from it.
Right.
Not to mention the financial benefit, not to mention a great friend, because she knew at that point, no matter what happened, I was going to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't 6 months ago. She called and said, "Hey, what do I need to do about this? This is what I'm thinking. I did this in Charleston where I lived, and my husband and I are moving to do this and all that kind of stuff, and I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Can you talk me through this?" And we spent 45 minutes talking through it.
It speaks to your leadership too. I mean, that's like when real estate agents look at their broker, they should be looking at an example. So, on a daily basis, that broker is setting a good precedent or a bad precedent,
Every day.
whether they realize it or not.
Every day.
And whether that broker wants to, check their ego at the door and realize this is that I don't care if an agent is a $50+ million a year producer or brand new. They're looking at you for guidance, and it's not always words.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know, what is my broker doing? Is he setting the example for me? Is he doing, or she, doing what they need to be doing in order to make this office more successful, make me more successful, and make themselves more successful? And
It's a shared reputation.
yeah, I think that people forget that, though.
They
I do.
Yeah, I'm positive
people,
they do. Yeah.
brokers take that for granted. Being a broker is a thankless job. I don't think that we do it for the thank yous. But brokers pay attention. You gotta realize that, you always have eyes on you, which is a great thing, which is a huge life-changing. I mean, you can change and shift somebody. Exactly.
Yeah.
You can change somebody's life by doing the right thing day in and day out, and it pisses me off. It really, really pisses me off when I see other brokers setting the wrong example or teaching their freaking agents to do scummy stuff, or to be half-ass, or to encourage bad behavior, or to encourage illegal actions, which I see all the time.
Yep.
It affects me personally, and I shouldn't let it affect me personally, because you and I work so hard every day to make sure that the industry is better.
To make sure to make sure that the public looks at the agent in a better way.
Yeah.
The relationship of the broker with the agent has been commoditized, and
Sure.
and the role has been pushed back from what I think that it originally was. With all that being said, we're where we are as an industry with how people look at us.
Yeah.
And we're in a deserved place
Right.
a lot of times. I mean, we didn't get here by accident.
Right.
And I like it that you and I are kicking ass and making sure that it doesn't stay that way. That's good stuff, man.
If you're not looking to leave the industry or leave your office or leave your company in a better place when you're gone, or that day when you hang up your hat and you go home.
That's right. Every day.
You're not right for my office if you're not thinking that way, and if the brokers aren't constantly trying to improve their situation or improve their office's situation, their culture, it just grinds my gears. I see so much of it where I'm I got an issue with an agent in my office dealing with another agent outside of the company, and I have to speak with that broker about what's going on in the situation. And don't get me wrong, this is not a negative tirade whatsoever.
No, agreed.
And really, you should take this as a positive thing, because I actually dealt with a broker yesterday that handled things perfectly.
Absolutely.
And I love this lady. But there are a lot of people out there who take everything for granted and do not set the right tone for their people.
Yep.
And it drives me nuts.
Absolutely.
All you're doing is reinforcing
the bad reputation. That unfortunately in a lot of situations we've earned. We gotta fight our way out of that.
Yeah.
This is a noble profession. We're dealing with the public.
Yeah.
This is something that sometimes a real estate transaction you don't need an agent that an agent's involved in. Completely agree. It could have happened without it.
Yeah.
There's always idiosyncrasies that if it doesn't go exactly right, so it's like a surgery. So, but all right. So let's talk about leads.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, we kind of touched on that. One of the things that you and I have had conversations about, and we've talked with agents about, there's, I think sometimes the agent gets confused that a lead is a transaction. And sometimes whenever you receive information, you receive a lead, something comes in from the internet, a phone call comes in. Sometimes it's just an opportunity to help. Sometimes it's just an opportunity to point somebody in the right direction.
Right.
Sometimes, an agent that I had in Georgia got a web lead from somebody, called, followed up, put them on a drip campaign, stayed in contact with them. 2.5 years later, the guy walks in the office and says, "Hey, I'm looking for Robert." And Robert's like, "Hey, that's me." And he's like, "Hey, finally we made the decision to be here." And oh, Robert's like, "Oh, that's great, all that kind of stuff. Have a seat. We'll get started." Robert turns around, looks at me, and goes, "What the? Who is this?" And so he finally figures out that it was just somebody that never answered phone calls.
Yeah.
Never responded back to the email for the most part. Was using the search.
Yeah.
When the time came, the guy rolls in. Robert sold him something that weekend.
That's cool. Yeah. That's
Just
follow up.
Follow up and follow through, man.
Yeah.
So so people get confused on a transaction versus a lead, right?
Yeah.
So we both know there's like 8 billion ways to get a lead, right? So what do you think is the biggest thing conversion wise on a lead that someone needs to do that we can, if somebody's watching right now and they're trying to up their business and they're trying to take that next step, how do they get a lead from something coming in turning into a transaction? How do they do that? What's number one thing, or what's a big thing that they should do?
What's the quickest way that they can turn a lead around?
No, so step one, so the email comes in, or the phone call comes in, or the text comes in, or the chat bot, pops up and says, "Hey, I think I'm, can you give me some more information about this property?"
Right.
What's the first thing that the person should do?
My go-to would be to call the person and actually get them on the phone and not really talk too much about the property itself or try to go on a jabber, because that's what every realtor would do.
Right.
I would set up a meeting in person as fast as possible.
Right. Get there and get connected with them.
Because no matter who you are, I mean, we're in sales, but if you're able to get in front of somebody, the likelihood of the no diminishes.
Right.
Big time. It's easy to tell a telemarketer to shove it on the phone. It's easy to ignore a text, and it's even easier to ignore an email.
Right.
But you're not going to ignore somebody. You're actually going to give somebody the time of day if you actually meet in person.
Right.
And it almost qualifies the lead at that point.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It qualifies them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would probably be the biggest thing that I would think that needs to happen is the qualification process. Of course, you got to get connected with the person and everything, and I think trying to get them on the phone, talk to them, and get that appointment, sit down with them, and absolutely, I think that's step number one, because that does begin the qualification process. But pre-qualifying them, and I don't mean financially.
Yeah.
Pre-qualifying them and having and answering some questions. I'll give you a quick story. Again, I'm from Georgia, so everything's a damn story. So
that's why you're good at this podcast thing.
Right. I'm going to burn up the little SD card we've got in there, right?
We got enough time.
Right. So I was talking to Sean. We both love Sean.
He's the best.
He is, and so he was trying to transition from what he was doing to being in real estate, and he comes in one day frazzled, and we talked about, was he pre-qualifying the leads that he was getting, and the light went off for him. And now he does such a fantastic job of being able to move forward or move on from the lead.
Yeah.
So what he learned how to do in being able to ask those questions, and to start with, we used a printed script. I was like, you got to ask these questions. And he learned it, and he used it, and he wrote everything down. Now it's all inherent to him.
Yeah.
Now it's all in his head. He can do it so conversationally because he knows what to ask. Because he's an analytical guy, I said, look, the people that you don't have 60% positive answers you can trust on your pre-qualification, move on from them.
Right.
Put them on a drip campaign, stay connected, whatever it is that you need to do, but move on from them time-wise.
That's your warm list, not your hot list. Yeah.
That's right. And so the biggest thing that he saw was the people that were burning his time up were people that weren't willing to commit to a truthful answer.
Right.
That weren't willing to commit to really sitting down with him, that weren't really willing to commit to send him a pre-qualification letter, that weren't really willing to commit to bedrooms and baths. Oh, don't worry about that. I've got that figured out. Just show me this house. Those were the people that were most demanding of his time,
yeah,
and least committed to the process
sure.
with him. So until we put a process in place with him, he struggled with that. So the biggest thing with me is absolutely you have to have a process to qualify that lead to see whether they're going to turn into a transaction or not.
And by treating those leads like you're talking about, what you're doing is you're setting a precedent with that customer as well.
Absolutely.
And so you're automatically introducing this customer into a legitimate way of doing business,
Yep.
and respect goes through the roof
Right.
when people understand that process.
They know they're dealing with a professional.
Yeah. Well, I think what's really interesting, and people, this goes for two things. This goes for when you're meeting a client for the first time, and this also goes for when you're showing houses. The biggest mistake people make when meeting a new customer or showing a property is going right after the jugular on the real estate. You know, we understand that we're
ABC.
standing in a kitchen. We get it. We know what a kitchen looks like. You don't have to point out the freaking kitchen. That drives me nuts. This is the master bath. No shit, we're in the master bedroom.
Right,
I can tell. So what drives me nuts about that?
And what that does, and I know you know this, and I don't mean to cut you off, but what
Yeah.
that does is that diminishes how they look at you as a professional when you do stupid shit like
Your
that.
value is like,
They're like, no joke, are you kidding me? It's a bathroom? Yes, we know it's a bathroom.
it drives me nuts. It's like when I see a realtor do that, and I got my listing or whatever, and the buyer's agent comes in and they're like, okay, well here's the guest bedroom and here's the ceiling, and I'm like, oh god, oh god. So the point of this is create a rapport with somebody, understand why they're moving or why they're looking or why they need downsize or upsize. What we need to find out is we need to find out their life right now and what the motivation truly is behind this move. Maybe there's an in-law suite that needs to happen because instead of going into hospital care or whatever, you got to bring the mother-in-law and whatever it is. But in order to provide the best service for that customer, you have to understand what they're feeling. And the best realtors that I know are able to get inside of what those people are feeling and then be able to turn it and throw that value right back at them.
Absolutely. So here's the
It's like a magic trick.
It is. So here's the script that I use on that. Okay, from showing a house. So of course, we both coach the people to make sure they understand the why of the person purchasing the house, and I believe that they should have like a top 10 list, the things that are the most important, and have the conversation, which is the important part of that. It's actually more important than the list. The list is the byproduct of having the conversation. But
Right.
So they walk into the house, and whenever they walk into the house, they say, Mr. and Miss Jones, the reason why we're here is because this house meets 9 of the 10 things that are on your top 10 list, and it's in the middle of the price point, and we both agreed that would make it a desirable home.
Right.
Please walk through and notice all the things that we talked about, the this, the that, the other. So in other words, I'm hitting the highlights of what they said was important to me. And then if there's anything that you think we can't work out through the offer process, please let me know. And if there's anything we need to change on the list, now's the time to talk about it.
I love that.
So that is basically saying, and if the buyer walks in and they're not committed to the transaction, you know what they're going to say? Oh no, number 7 doesn't matter anymore, and number 6 is wrong, and you're like, wait a minute,
No, yeah.
let's stop and write this back down and figure this back out, because it's forcing them back into that funnel of telling you what they're really looking for.
Yeah.
Then you can tell if they're full of shit.
Yeah, totally.
But you're walking in and you're saying the reason why we're looking at this one is because you told me this is what you wanted.
Right.
Now I look like the expert.
Right.
Because I listened to you. We had a conversation, and you know what I did?
Yeah.
I listened.
And that's beautiful because a really good realtor is able to not only guide their client because they understand them on another level, but they're also able to pull those emotions and use those emotions for the better.
Great point.
So the benefit of having a really good real estate agent is that a buyer and a seller don't always know what they want or what they need.
Agreed.
And that is the true value. So the naysayers out there that say that this system can be, automated and whatever on technology, I call bullshit, because a really good realtor, I'm talking tip-top realtors, the people who actually take this job seriously and do it day in and day out, understand and can absolutely transform the process where the buyer or the seller actually didn't have that vision.
That's right. And didn't know you hit it nail on the head. Didn't know exactly what they wanted.
Yeah.
Or they thought they wanted something, and then when they see it, they're like, this doesn't quite fit. There's not something that's right about this. If you get to the why of why those things are important,
Yeah.
and you're an experienced agent that's used to listening to people,
Yeah.
and used to connecting with your broker and saying, hey, look, I just left this appointment and this just came up. What the hell do I do? I'm going to the next house.
Yeah.
And then you talk that through with an experienced broker. When you get to that next house, you can say, hey, this is where we're at. Talk to, if it's not your broker, talk to an experienced agent, somebody else.
100%.
Call and you show up at the next house and you're like, hey, I noticed that you said this. Is this what we were thinking? And they're like, holy crap, maybe that is what I'm thinking. If you want loyalty from people, if you want people to refer you for the next 10 years in real estate, you do that and you truly connect and listen and help them out. Man, that's how you're a realtor for life. That's how they always come back to you. So when agents are looking around going, I don't know why so-and-so, my friend, would use them instead of using me.
Right. Well, guess what?
That's the reason why.
Yeah. And people don't want to take ownership of that.
Yeah.
I think that the number one skill that a real estate agent can have is emotional intelligence.
Agreed.
If you're able to read people and understand situations and put yourself in the right spot at the right time and know how to think on your feet, emotional intelligence can make you more money than you've ever dreamed of.
Absolutely.
If you get one thing out of the podcast today, I would say it's ask more questions and listen.
And listen, absolutely. Out of all of our podcasts, I think that's not just going to be today.
Yeah.
So, and the key is they should listen to our podcast. That's really the key.
Listen to the podcast.
Listen
This is
to the
subliminal
podcast. So, all right. So that's a little bit about a lead conversion and showing properties and everything.
We're running out of time on the disc.
Yeah. So one more topic here, right? You said you're reading that book. What else is going on that's helping you grow who you are and be a bigger, better person? What else is happening with you?
Well, I mean, we always talk about the reading books aspect, but something big happened in our life just recently. My wife just graduated from her master's program. She works for Baycare.
That's awesome.
And so she just graduated with her master's in healthcare administration, and I would say that was a big shift in my life because it taught me a lot about myself, and it taught me a lot about what it takes to make relationships work,
right,
and how hard that can be at certain times.
That's awesome.
Because my wife she'd get home late and then she'd study for a couple more hours, and then on the weekends we didn't have a life for a while, and really I think that she doesn't understand that. I know that she learned a lot through that process, but mm-hmm. I think I learned so much just by watching her passively.
About her.
Yeah, and it made me better.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that happened.
And it strengthened your relationship. That's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
How about you?
So my son right now is he's overseas, right? So he loves the beautiful game, and he's actually in
the beautiful game. You guys know what that is?
Yeah.
Come on. It's soccer.
It's soccer. It's the only beautiful game.
Yeah.
So he loves it. And while he was over there, he's in Norway for 6 weeks, right? Somebody in college that he played that was a goalie. He plays forward. So he went over there to see him, and he had an opportunity to go to Italy to try out. And since he was 10 or 11 years old, we jokingly talked about all the time, I'm going to watch you on TV one day. And he's been through a lot of sacrifice to get to this point. Okay, he has always been a utility player and was never really given the opportunity to be what he was great at.
Right.
He played, and so one coach very late in his career saw that, and in a tournament that was a high stakes tournament, this one coach that saw that put him in a position which allowed a college coach to see him. That college coach that saw him, he roomed with a goalie, mm-hmm. and the goalie that he roomed with is from Norway.
Got it.
So Stu's in Norway right now. I absolutely positively love it for him, and he had a chance to go to Italy. Or in November, he's going to have a chance to go to Germany, and this guy's talking to him about scouts, talking to him about people that he can play in front of. So he wanted to cut his trip to Norway short at 19 years old to come back and get focused on his training so he can make the most of the trip whenever he goes in November back to Germany.
What a life lesson.
And sometimes so school's never been his thing, right? Yeah. He's not he doesn't.
It's not for everybody.
Right.
It's definitely not.
And he struggles with that. soccer is so natural to him. And so I can tell he gets depressed, he gets upset, he gets, off track and all that kind of stuff and everything. But every little step, it seems like every time he takes a big step forward, there's 2 or 3 or 4 little steps back.
Right.
And then all of a sudden something else falls in place, the tumbler, because he stays focused on what he's supposed to stay focused on. The parallel with real estate on that is, you got to keep doing the right thing.
Yeah. It's easy to get down in this business. The lows are pretty low.
They are. They're tough, man. It's difficult to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and because sometimes, especially agents that really grab onto the independent contractor side of this, they're the ones that that aren't part of the culture, don't really connect with the broker, don't really connect with the team. They're just there kind of to make the money, and this is their job, and they want to go home and do it. Those are the ones that the peaks, they feel all the rush of the peak.
Yeah.
But the bottom, they feel all the dirt under their nails from the bottom.
Yeah.
And those are the agents I feel bad for.
I do too.
Because it doesn't have to be that way.
I've been there.
Yeah.
As an agent,
Yeah.
and it's easy to beat yourself up like that.
Oh, yeah.
I love that though. The reason I like Stu's story so much on that is because, some days you feel when you wake up that life just hasn't been going your way, and maybe what you're doing career path wise, isn't for you, and you're not good. You're not good enough. You're not cut out for it. But if you keep moving forward, if you just continue to push on despite what your dumb head is telling you, keep putting one foot in front of the other, opportunities happen. But opportunities only happen to those who are willing to push and move forward.
100% agree.
Because if you're not pushing and moving forward, you're not only going to be presented those opportunities, but you're not going to see those opportunities.
That's right. Yeah, your RAS. I mean, let's get physiological about it. Your RAS isn't going to see them.
Yeah.
I mean, the filter's turned off to it.
Right.
You've convinced yourself to turn the filter off. You're not going to see those. You're not going to see those opportunities.
Right.
And so I love it when the light goes off for an agent on that. I love it that the light's going off for him. The difficult part is
so cool, man. You got to be proud, father. That moment just makes you beam.
It does. So it's 6 a.m. on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And my phone, the text goes off and everything. And normally I don't mess with my phone before about 8 o'clock, right? And other than to listen to shit, and it goes off and everything. And he's out of town, and so he beeps.
Naturally, you're like,
something.
okay, I got to look at this. What's going on?
Right. And so then he calls like 30 seconds later. And he says, hey, so and so, and there's a scout and all that. And I was like, man, that's just fabulous. And he goes, well, I want to come home early.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, you don't get to, I'm not sending you back to Norway anytime soon.
Right, right.
And he's like, no, I get it, man. I need to get back. I need to get going. I'm like, man, let's go.
See, regardless of the outcome of this in the future, and I wish him well, what I want out of him for that is what's supposed to happen.
Right. Agreed.
But I think that, because I had learning lessons like this throughout my young life, is he'll remember that forever.
Oh, yeah.
And he'll remember that it made him not better physically. Yes, he'll get in better physical shape, and he'll have better touch and all that type of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But the win was here.
Absolutely.
And is here. And I think he'll remember that forever.
Yeah. And I haven't touched that part with him. All I said was, let's do it.
Rock on.
What do you need me to do? And of course, the answer was money. It's like, I need some money for this. I'm like, shit, here we go. Just like always.
Damn it.
But with that being the situation, it is what it is.
I think that's a good segue out of this this chat, man. I think that's
agree.
a great a good takeaway.
Yep, it's been fabulous talking to you, just like
man.
always.
Yeah.
Yep.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
Well, people, have a great weekend. Go kill it. Go tell your family you love them.
So yeah, absolutely. Give them a hug. Tell them you're grateful for them. So a couple of quick things. We've got some events coming up, okay?
Yep.
So if you're interested in participating, one is coming up in Savannah, and one is quite possibly College Station in Texas.
Yep.
And so if you're interested in participating in some of those, just let us know, and we'll get you some information on how to be around some of this. But there's also some other lead generation stuff we'll go over and talk specifically about how to make the most of your business. So
Absolutely. Have a good one, peeps.
All right, thanks.